So he's often called, to Piers' chagrin, the best political interviewer in the business.
I actually agree. I think he is.
What does chagrin mean? Is that your actual French?
It's in Article C, as we'll discuss in just a moment. When Andrew Neil stepped down from hosting the late night This Week programme, the show was cancelled.
Well, he now hosts the Andrew Neil Show in the run-up to Brexit on October the 31st, a period, he says, is destined to be the most intriguing and significant in British politics for at least a generation. And we're delighted to say Andrew Neil has got out of bed at this ungodly hour, probably for the first time ever on national television.
Don't tell anybody that.
Have you ever, apart from an election, have you ever appeared on television at this time of the morning?
I used to do BBC Breakfast.
Did you?
From this very building. I used to come in and review the papers, and I did LBC's morning show.
This
is nothing. This is quite... The day's half over now.
We share the same roots at BBC Breakfast.
Indeed we do.
Course, yeah.
Well, it's great to be back, and thank you.
Andrew, what do you... I mean, many people say this is the most extraordinarily turbulent, unpredictable period of modern political history in this country. Do you agree?
There's no question about that. I mean, it's throughout my career, this is the most unpredictable time. It's the most bizarre time. I mean, I remember covering the repeal of the Corn Laws in 1842, and that was quite a turbulent time. I don't think you were just a little bit too young to be... I think maybe you did it for your school paper, but I was there for the BBC, and this is bizarre. It is remaking politics in front of us. It's remaking the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, and the Liberal Democrat Party. Old relationships are breaking up. How you voted is changing. It used to be in this country social class, income, background, professional, working class and so on. That tells you nothing about voting behaviour. How did you vote in the 2016 referendum now determines to a large extent how you will vote in the next general election.
We've become very tribal. I think a lot of it's fuelled by social media.
Indeed.
You're not allowed to be balanced or fair, really. You have to take your tribal position. Same in America with Trump. You're for him, you're against him. There's no middle ground. There's no real coming together, meeting across the aisle, as used to be the case. This is not good for democracy, is it? If we lose that ability to argue with each other but maintain respect and to acknowledge perhaps some good in the other position.
I think it's a dangerous time for that. You get brownie points by going to the extremes. You don't get any brownie points by trying to coalesce in the centre. I mean, you take the American situation, it used to be you appealed to your core vote, Republican or Democrat, to get nominated. Once you got nominated, you moved to the centre to get the rest of the country on side. That won't happen this time. You'll appeal to your core vote and it will become a battle of who can get their core vote out most. What biggest percentage of your core vote can you get out? And in the end, that isn't that healthy. And in this side, in the Brexit, this country, in the Brexit debate, votes have gone to those who have the most clarity. So if you're really for leave, you get the votes.
Yeah.
Farage, who's a very good communicator. I mean, actually, it's about communication, isn't it?
Of course.
The best communicators are able to resonate with their message and it sticks in people's minds.
And the Liberal Democrats have decided if you're really for Remain, the best thing is to have a simple Remain message.
And it's completely shameless in many ways, and yet it might
you
be...
may say that.
But it might be politically astute. I mean, as a move to get more support.
It is not a period of nuance.
You talk about clarity. I thought it was very interesting in the run-up of the Conservative leadership campaign. You interviewed the two candidates, as they were then, Jeremy Hunt and Boris Johnson.
Seems like 30 years ago.
Does, doesn't it?
Now, what's so interesting about Boris is, in fact, sometimes he's not very clear, and he had to go at you about detail, which suddenly came back to bite him.
That came about because he'd been criticised for not doing the detail, for trying to bluff his way through.
And then he criticises you for not knowing the detail.
But he then, in subsequent interviews, started to harden up in the detail and talk about paragraph 5B. Someone had clearly told him 5B was the pivotal paragraph. So I looked at the treaty and read paragraph 5C, and I thought, I'll bet he doesn't know what 5C is. And it turned out to be true.
There are many ways of doing political interviews. You know, there's the Jeremy Paxman way of, I think all these people are lying to me and I'm going to keep sledgehammering them and so on. That seems to have sort of gone out of vogue. Your style is... I mean, I would defy anyone to watch you and say there's any bias in your interviewing or any suggestion of which way you personally feel about stuff. But you're forensic on the detail and you're forensic in examining their ability to clarify their own policies and their own positions.
And actually, it's interesting what Piers says there, because if you go to social media, you get a lot of criticism.
From all sides.
But from everybody. But I think everybody gets criticism on social media.
Yes, and also people assume, well, they like to assume, Piers likes to assume, my particular view, and then all of a sudden, the next moment, you'll get a criticism for representing the other point.
Exactly. I mean, people always like an interview you've done if it accords with their views.
Yes.
I mean, my approach to interviews is fact-based. I try to find out what people stand for and what they're arguing for, and then I take the opposite view. That's the simple way to do it.
You challenge them on everything that they...
I marshal the facts that are contrary to what they're saying and let's check how robust they are. Let's check how good they are. It seems to work.
But I think it's a real minefield now for all editors, in that you're not just dealing with your audience and your readers. You have this massive social media call to public opinion, and it can come out of nowhere. I don't think the some are expecting the kind of backlash they've had at all. And I think the fact they haven't mentioned it today reflects that. I think they were taken aback by it. You know, I think probably targeting someone as popular as Stokes at this particularly time...
after this summer.
Right, it's probably just bad timing and all the rest of it. But the story itself, you know, I don't think 20 years ago would have been particularly problematic for them. Now, a lot of these kind of stories, people are saying, no, we're not having it.
It's a sign, is it not, that that kind of tabloid journalism, which prospered most in the 1980s under Kelvin Mackenzie at The Sun, it's over. It's
certainly very different.
You look at the circulations now, they're way down. I mean, everybody's down, but the tabloids have taken the biggest hit.
What do you think will happen with... I mean, print newspapers, it seems to me, the clock is ticking pretty furiously down. Online newspapers are beginning to gather more power and momentum.
You see, I think that journalism now is in a bit of a heyday. I think if you get the business model right, newspapers will prosper. And the future is subscription. There's no point producing something if people aren't prepared to pay for it. And good journalism is expensive. I mean, I'm giving you an opinion that costs cheapest chips. But for me to go and investigate something, to get to the bottom of something, that's expensive. And papers like the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Financial Times, the Times in London, our own magazine, The Spectator, we've gone to a subscription model. You have to pay. You don't get it for free. And the money's coming in. And I think, you know, you'll see the business model revived in a way that gives journalism a new lease of life. I am not pessimistic about it.
No, I'm not either.
I think there's going to be money there for proper journalism, and I think we've never needed it more. Because good journalism checks facts, tests, does its homework. We get it wrong every now and then, but we don't intentionally get it wrong.
No.
And there's so much rubbish out there, so much fake news, so much distortion.
The trouble is, Andrew,
we need to be there.
Absolutely.
At the moment, when the country is absolutely riven, split down the middle in two tribes, each accuses the other constantly of sowing lies, deliberate misinformation and fake news.
I was speaking to some people in Parliament last night, and I'm depressed by both the approach of the Leave campaign and the Remain campaign, because they both involve running down our country. So the Leave people say if we're in the European Union, we're just a vassal state. The Remain people say if we leave, we'll be of third world irrelevance. I mean, one politician said to me, oh, we'll be like North Korea. Both statements are demonstrably true. I mean, in or out of the EU, untrue. So it's demonstrably untrue. See, I'm falling into
Fake news.
Fake news.
For the other side, they're demonstrably true.
Despite the deep tribal differences, in or out of the EU, this is still a great country. You can argue be better in or better out, but running ourselves down to suit the Leave argument or the Remain argument, I think is really unhealthy.
What's going to happen?
I have no idea.
No, don't you find that...
I did my homework to come here. That was 10 minutes, already changed. It's already gone.
I remember sitting down next to you at a lovely lunch.
But you know what?
You gave me, hang on, Piers, and you gave me a very detailed explanation of what was going to happen next. And as you said, within 24 hours, all of that had gone out the window.
I mean, if I'd been here 2 weeks ago, I would have said there'll be an election in October. Last week, I'd have said there'll be an election in November. No, I'm not so sure.
Is there going to... There has to be an election of some sort.
I think there has to be at some stage.
Either a referendum or a general election.
This is something of a zombie parliament now.
Yes.
I mean, the government's on the wrong... Even with the DUP, the government's on the wrong end of 40 votes. So it won't get its Queen's speech through, it couldn't get a budget through, but it could just stagger through. I've been surprised. I underestimated the extent to which the opposition parties didn't want an election.
Yes.
You know, when the opposition parties said to me, bring it on, we're ready for it, make my day.
Was it fake news?
Like an idiot.
Yeah, you believe them.
I believe them. We won't make that mistake again.
A couple of quick things before we let you go about the BBC. You're a BBC man. Two things. One, the whole gender pay dispute and how that's raging. Gary Lineker this week, the highest paid BBC employee, saying he's going to take a significant pay cut when he renews his contract. Is it right that predominantly male stars at the BBC are having to take pay cuts simply because the BBC historically has not paid women fairly?
Well, I think you see, with the position of males, I didn't take a pay cut because my pay's not high enough to be cut. But others did take a pay cut. I think you're seeing that that's a historical situation. The men now in situ, men of my age or a bit younger, have come up through when it was a male-dominated world. And they've had the experience and they've done the jobs. The women coming through now are a generation behind. And that's why you've had, I think, this difference in pay. I think now the BBC has to be in a situation where if you have a man and a woman of equal experience and equal worth in terms of their professional abilities, it has to be equal. How can it be anything else? And I think that at the moment they're going through a transition period where this older generation, my generation, mainly male, will work its way through. And I would hope and think, and I'm sure the BBC is working on this, that the new generation coming through are definitely equal. I mean, what would the argument be for it not being equal?
I mean, I don't even see
Well
why
said.
it shouldn't even end at equality. If a woman is better than a man, she should get paid more money.
Oh, I agree. And if you have more experience, and I think that we're in this situation where the men have had more experience because they prospered in a male-dominated world. And that's now coming to an end.
On the TV licence issue, finally, a lot of anger about this, that the BBC entered into a deal with the Conservatives in which they took on the free licence fee for the over 75s and now appears to be reneging on it, having already raised the licence fee cost, which was going to be the quid pro quo. What do you feel about this?
The BBC took it on, but only till the end of a particular period, and then it was up to the BBC to decide what to do. I mean, I know lots of well-off 75-year-olds. Should they get a free licence?
But there are lots of very poor 75-year-olds.
But they would still get it.
But most of them don't claim it.
Then there should be a campaign, and perhaps the BBC should be a part of that, to encourage them to do so. It's seven. I mean, the government played a sleight of hand here. It basically dumped social policy
But the
onto the
BBC agreed to it, didn't it? I mean, Tony Hall...
But it was a time limit.
When it happened, he said, I think this is a good deal for
I know
the
this
BBC.
is a campaign. You're in the lucky position. You're allowed to have campaigns.
Yes.
I'm not.
I'm allowed to have opinions.
I'm not. And that's fine.
It's refreshing.
Though I'll be writing to Ofcom after this programme to check. I mean, I do think that those purely on state pensions, they should continue to get the free licence, and they will. But I think those who've got other pensions, whose incomes are quite reasonable, I think it's reasonable for them
We've
to
had pensioners
pay.
in tears
Yeah.
on this programme, saying that they already choose between eating and heating, and now they're going to have to reconsider.
But I think that's partly because they have been misled into thinking they're going to lose their free licence. They're the ones that won't lose their free licence, nor should they lose it. And perhaps the BBC should be part of a campaign to raise that awareness.
The BBC tried to get rid of you. They took this week off the airways. I was on the last show.
They did not
and then, like
try.
a phoenix from the ashes. I know you weren't. I'm only joking.
Don't get rid of
I'm only
Andrew
joking. They
Neil.
weren't really good. But they tried to take that show away from you. And there was such a public backlash against it that very, very quickly, up you pop with a new show.
Well, first of all, I will be forever grateful to you for coming on to our last show. It was a hell of a show.
It was a great show.
And I understand it's a quirky show. It probably is more a late-night show. They couldn't find a better time, and I said, that's fine, but I don't want to do it anymore. And we did our final show. It was a huge success. I did the Boris Johnson interview, and they've come up with the Andrew Neil show, 7 o'clock, BBC
Ironically, at the kind of time you wanted to do the other one.
And by the way, I want we only spent 4 months in the Cayman Islands working out what the name of the show should be.
And the name of the show is?
The Andrew Neil Show. 7 o'clock, BBC Two.
Not to be confused with the Andrew Marr show.
It's a brilliant show. It's basically Andrew skewering everybody. Doesn't matter who you are. He's an equal opportunity skewer.
I'm glad
Andrew,
you said that.
Great to see you. The best political interviewer of modern times. A treasure to have you on this show. Thank you.
It's on tonight.
It's on tonight.
Who's on?
I don't know yet.
Oh, it's very last minute.
It's very last minute.
Thoughts and prayers for whoever that is.
Yes.
Hey, thank you all. Thank you very
Andrew,
much.
great to see you.
See you.